This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm Tim Grimes. If you'd like a free guide that explains the hidden link between relaxation and the Law of Attraction, or if you want more information about my books or my coaching, you can visit radicalcounselor.com. Enjoy the episode. The last few episodes have been way out there, which, as most of you know, is where I like to be a lot of the time with the stuff I talk about. Way out there. And if you're newer to my stuff or have just found this podcast, I just want to let you know that I always regard myself as more of a, I guess the word would be mystical teacher than a law of attraction teacher. Stuff you can't put into words. And not that you can put the law of attraction into words that easily, but it's easier to explain and make sense of than the deep stuff, which you just can't make any rational sense of whatsoever. And the last couple episodes have been talking, a lot along those lines. But the connection, as we say, that seems to be there, that definitely is there in a practical sense, most of the time at least, is that when you get deep, there's abundance here. There's a natural, life-giving abundance here. It's good. It's good on this profound level, that we really can't even put into words. And that, I think, is one of the primary connections between when we get deep like this and how to apply the law of attraction in such a way, connecting the two. The connection can often be to simply recognize when you are truly present in the way we've been talking about in the last couple episodes. You just are there, right? There's no point to being there. You're just there. There's not even you when you're there like this, right? And then if you decide, you know what, I want to do something to improve my life, which is not even real, that's just a concept. But if you, step back and get a little bit more rational about it, and you're like, I want to improve my life, an easy way to improve your life and an excellent application of these law of attraction principles is to recognize how you feel when you're here, when you're present. It's recognizing that abundance, that state of grace, you would basically say. And I would also say that so many of these law of attraction teachings are just touching upon this. It's like, be still and recognize God. In many ways, that is the most fundamental law of attraction teaching. H. Emily Cady, she's always talking about this. Emmett Fox, the Golden Key, that's what that's all about. Joseph Murphy, he talks a lot about the absolute method and just recognizing the total divinity of life itself and having that heal you. Even someone like Neville, who obviously is often talking about utilizing your imagination, he also talks about conceiving a perfection that is beyond anything that you can even imagine, basically. Perfection in and of itself. These are all touching upon the same theme, which is recognizing the depth of the moment. And even a practical teacher like Coué is saying that your subconscious is naturally healing you if you allow it to heal you by letting God in. He doesn't use the word God, but he's saying, you let your imagination work for you, everything takes care of itself. Likewise, Joseph Murphy talks about in The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, he has a chapter called The Tendency of the Subconscious is Lifeward. And he writes in that chapter, many say there is an intelligence which will take care of your body if you let it alone. And this is what Coué is saying. Coué is basically saying that your imagination wants to work with you, your subconscious wants to work with you to do what it does best, which is give you life and make you abundant and full of health, but that we sabotage it by imagining and fearing bad things happening to us. And the recognition of God, the golden key, as Emmett Fox talks about it, is taking your mind off of these fears and putting it in the proper place. Now we say proper place just in the sense that that's the place that we can heal from. And so all this comes back to or can come back to right now, this moment. And when we get really deep, like we did the last couple episodes, I mean, we've taken the law of attraction out of it just because we're going deep. But once you've taken it out of it, you can then put it back in. That can become your foundation once you get out of that place. And that place is the place of no place. It's the peace that passeth understanding. It's beyond time. But when you come back into time, your first layer, your foundation, can be one of recognizing this inherent lifeward abundance which you are, and recognizing it consistently. And there are so many different ways of doing this. It's what we often are talking about. And I want to just give you a practical way today to do that from Richard Dotz. We've already discussed Richard's book, Dissolve the Problem. Great book. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. And Richard is hard to, even though he is alive, he's very hard to contact. I've actually never been able to reach him and speak to him. It's very hard to reach. So I don't mean to be putting words in his mouth, but I would say, since I'm unable to reach him and get his opinion on it, I would say that Richard is talking about what we're discussing here, and that he talks about recognizing this inherent abundance that we all have in basically all his books. I would say that's the primary gist of his teachings. And you should definitely check out Richard Dotz if you're unfamiliar with his work. Like I said, he is by far my favorite modern law of attraction writer. And he talks a lot about different techniques and stuff, but like all of his techniques are almost like anti-techniques. Or not all of his techniques, but most of his techniques are about dropping the technique, which I love and really appreciate, because if you follow my stuff, that's primarily how I deal with the law of attraction, is we just drop everything to fall into what we want. If we drop everything, what we want comes to us a lot of the time. And very few people, dead or alive, describe this better than Richard, this process. He's a master at describing this. If you want a short summation of him describing this, he has a book called The Magic Feeling, which is a very short book, masterpiece. Really describes this succinctly. But like I said, basically all his books describe the process of dropping the technique and getting to the essential core of abundance that you naturally are. And the excerpt I'm about to read is from Dollars Flow to Me Easily. Dollars Flow to Me Easily, which is one of his more popular books. And he's referring to this technique that he talks about in The Magic Feeling, which is basically an anti-technique, the dropping of the technique. And he writes, "Do you realize now why this is the best quote-unquote technique I have used for manifesting wealth and abundance in my life? There is not even a quote-unquote technique because there is nothing to do. All I did was to merely sit quietly by myself in a place where I would not be interrupted, close my eyes, and focus inwards. Once I had done so, I observed the mind chatter that went by without engaging in any of it. Gradually, I perceived the universal goodness, or magic feeling, as I describe in my book of the same name, until my perception of these pleasant feelings became more and more intense. That is the only thing you have to do, if you have to do anything at all. 3 times a day, of 15 minutes each, will disconnect and disengage you from your old reality and create a new opening that is just what is needed for wealth and abundance to flow into your life." So basically in that excerpt, Richard's giving a practical example of how to utilize this recognition of our inherent abundance. So we can get really deep with this recognition, right? We can recognize now. And once we've done that, we can take a step back and as our foundation just kind of soak ourselves, bathe ourselves in this feeling of goodness, this depth of goodness. And this is just what H. Emily Cady so often talks about, what Emmett Fox talks about, what Joseph Murphy talks about when he's talking about the absolute method, what Quimby, basically the founder of New Thought, talked about when he was healing people in Maine and New Hampshire back in the mid-1800s. And Dots' practical recommendation that he gives in Dollars Flow to Me Easily is just 3 times a day for about 15 minutes each time. Be there with that. Be there with God. And there's different ways of doing this, obviously. It doesn't have to be 3 times a day for 15 minutes. You can do it twice a day for 30 minutes or, throughout the day at 2-3 minute increments or whatever. The larger point, the recognizing your inherent abundance, recognizing God, and being in touch with that throughout the day. That's the practical point, the practical technique that I want to share with you today. Because we can get really deep, and I like to just get really deep for the sake of getting really deep. But then what's wonderful is we can also step back just a little bit and utilize this stuff in a very practical way. And Richard Dodds is a master at exploring and explaining how to do that. So in my opinion, we get deep to get deep. And then if we want to, and it's just a choice, it's just an optional choice. If we want to, we can also utilize that depth that we've accessed, that abundance we've accessed, to better our lives. And just doing that, just accessing the magic feeling, as Richard calls it, is enough to see profound changes in your life. I've experienced that for myself. I've seen it in the people I've worked with. I've seen it in readers. So test it out if you like. And enjoy. We'll talk more soon.